Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I had the great pleasure to chat with Sam Ingraffia. Recently, he can be seen on Barry, but he's been on TV and movies for my entire life. We have a great chat about all of his work, dating back to The Incredible Hulk and Barney Miller, all the way up to Barry, and more. I hope you enjoy. Hi, this is Les.
Hi, Les. It's Sam Ingraffia calling in.
Thank you so much for making time today. I really appreciate it. So I was really glad to get to talk to you, both because Barry is an amazing show, but also just your career in television. Can you talk a little bit about what you thought when you first got the audition or saw the sides for Barry?
Yeah. It was very well. You know, I've done a ton of television, and television is different than film in that there's very little improvisation because usually the schedule is pretty tight. They have to shoot 7 or 8 pages in a day, and they have it all timed out. And when I showed up for the audition, Sharon Bialy, who's a great casting person who I've known for a while, said, when you finish the scene, keep going, don't stop, improvise. And I was like, really? And she said, yeah, they like people who can improvise. And so that's what I did almost another scene after the first scene ended. And I think that's possibly one of the reasons why I got the gig, because when I actually showed up on the set, Anthony Carrigan, who plays NoHo Hank, is he's just like the sweetest guy in the entire world. He came up to me to say hello and to introduce himself, because it's always like a weird deal, like when you're the guest star on the show, but you're not a series regular. There's always like that kind of awkward moment where, okay, how familiar should I be with the guy who's the regular on the show, and should I wait until we start rehearsing before I introduce myself? And he came up to me to say, hello, I'm Anthony. We're going to be working together today. It's going to be great. We're going to have a good time. And Alec Berg was, when we started actually shooting, he was kind of standing a little bit off camera, just kind of watching. And with every take, he would go up to Anthony and whisper to him something. So then we would do another take, and Anthony would totally change the lines. So it was like, so I had to really listen and react to, and then kind of improvise what I was going to say. So it's that kind of cool show where they actually do try to kind of be edgy and dangerous, but it's also kind of laugh out loud funny sometimes. So it's got this really cool combination.
In terms of how long you've been in television, how sets run, have you seen a change in that? Does it feel different showing up to Barry in 2019 versus Barney Miller?
Oh yeah, it's totally, well, I mean, it's not totally different in that there's still the same kind of hierarchical setup that there was before. The biggest change probably is when I started, everything was shot on film, so the director literally sat in a little chair and was probably 7 or 8 feet away. And he wasn't looking at a videotape monitor. He was actually he or she was watching the scene. You would do a take, and then they would get up and walk over and say something to each actor in the scene, and then go back and sit down, and you would do it again. And okay, great. Now this time try this, and this. Well, now everything's done on videotape. And then they have this ridiculous thing which is called Video Village, where the director and usually a couple of PAs and maybe the producer are sitting in chairs watching a monitor. And they might be in another room. Lots of times on a set, if you're shooting like in a practical, like a house, they're in the dining room and you're acting in the living room. And so you can't see them, you can't hear them. And then, the first AD goes, okay, let's reset and do it again. And you're like, well, okay, what do you want this time? Faster, slower, louder, more intimate? Tell me something. And so that's the thing. That was what was really cool again about Barry. It was kind of good news, bad news. Bill Hader didn't direct the episode, but Minky Spiro, who's this really cool woman, directed it, and she's like a throwback to old school directors. She would run down from the Video Village and come down and say, okay, Okay, that was really good. That was really nice. And she's English, and so she's very polite. And they're very nice. Oh, that's lovely. But this time, try it like you're on talk shows all the time, so you don't get thrown by any of this. And okay, so try it that way. And you're really nice. Okay, now let's this time try. You're a bit of a windbag, and you're kind of pontificating. Okay, we'll try that. And then okay. This time when he says that line to you, let me just see it in your eyes that you're going, what the hell's he talking about? So it was very cool. It was like kind of a throwback to the old days where you actually got to do a kind of a collaborative effort with the director, which was really nice.
As an actor, do you find that there's any perk to being a little bit more isolated like that?
I don't, because my background, I started in the theater, and I kind of like having somebody there to tell me what to do and talk to me and do all that kind of stuff. And also, it's funny, you kind of pick up good habits and bad habits as you do it. And when I first started as an actor, I realized that if you, out of your peripheral vision, you could see the director, the director was smiling or nodding, that was like a good thing. And you kind of go, oh, okay, I'm doing well. This is going well. And now you're kind of in this big vacuum where you kind of, and the actor's insecurity automatically thinks, oh, it's going badly. Mm-hmm. They want to do another take, so I must have screwed it up. It's my fault. I did something wrong.
That was kind of
most of the time.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, that was kind of what it was making me think of was whether, if the director's in the room and you might be able to see him out of your peripheral vision, whether that would be a plus or a minus, whether that might.
Well, yeah. I mean, it can be. Well, I mean, I remember one of the first television shows I did was The Incredible Hulk, and it was a trip to be on The Incredible Hulk, and it was really fun. But the first day, it's funny because the director and he was also the writer-producer of the show, and he and I got to be really, really good friends and worked together a bunch of times. But on the first day, I had studied with Lee Strasberg, and I was very method, and I was very serious, and I walked up to him, and he said, okay, here's how we're going to do the scene. We're going to block it. And we went through it one time. We did take number one, and I walked over and I said, I don't know if I really agree with, what the direction you're going with this scene. And he was like, Sam, your character is Slick Monty. You're wearing a red shirt and a white tie, and you're on The Incredible Hulk. Okay, let's do take number two.
You're overthinking this, Sam.
Yeah, okay, I get it. So, yeah, if you see somebody shaking their head and staring at their shoes after your first take, that could be a little intimidating. But I was always pretty cocky, and I always had enough confidence in myself that I kind of thought, I can do this stuff, and they'll like what I do. So I kind of like it, and also I'm like a pretty gregarious person, so I like to be able to kind of banter with the director a little bit, chat with them, kind of say, okay, what'd you think of that? Let's try this maybe next time. And, I usually show up pretty prepared, and so I know my lines backwards and forwards, and I know, and I listen to what they say. And so most directors will kind of go, okay, he seems to be prepared, he wants to try something, and he has some fairly intelligent questions about the character. Let's try a couple of takes that way. I like that, and unfortunately that's now with new technology, whether it's in the audition process where they just put you on tape and send the tape off to some unknown state, Georgia or Florida or Louisiana. And most of the time now when you get cast, you don't even meet the director till you show up on the set. You don't meet the other actors till you show up on the set, and you get off an airplane and they drive you to the set, and it's like, hey, this is your brother. They've kind of removed the personal touch between the actor and the other creative people on the set. And for me, I do miss that because I'm good in the room. And I always, that's one of the things I really liked about being an actor was you got to be somebody different than your own self, and you got to interact with people and have fun. And they've kind of slowly but surely with the technology is wonderful in a lot of ways, but in some ways it's kind of removed the personal touch out of it. Again, when I first started as an actor, casting directors had generals where you would show up at their office and they'd give you 3 pages and they'd say, okay, step outside, read this for 5 minutes, and then come back in. And you'd come back in and you'd read it, and they'd go, yeah, okay, fine. I'll call you next week. I'll talk to your agent. We'll make you policeman number 1. And, that's kind of how you started, and you learned how to be an actor, and you learned how to act on a set and what to do and what not to do. And now nobody has generals. You have, it's all demo reels. And again, it's great because I don't have to get in my car and drive 20 miles in bumper to bumper traffic to go to an audition, which is nice. They now send my demo reel or, some excerpt from a TV show, and that's in some ways good, but in some ways it's not as much fun as it used to be.
Yeah, and like you were saying on the set, that space for insecurity is so much easier. It's so much more present when you can't see the person,
of course.
making
and you automatically think that you screwed it up.
That's like, I sent the tape away and they didn't call me back immediately. Oh.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And of course, it has usually nothing to do with any of that stuff. It's like, they were eating lunch. The caterer brought the food late. That's why they didn't talk to you, immediately afterwards. But you automatically say, oh, no, it's probably the way I said that line, and they're back there now stewing over it, going, why did we hire this guy? He's awful.
I saw that scene I did 4 years ago that I didn't like. Oh,
yeah, exactly. Or they're rerunning the Incredible Hulk, and the director
Slick Monty. We're not casting that guy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now you've also written and directed yourself.
Yeah.
When going forward into projects like that, are there lessons you try to take from sets you've been on? Are there things you try to never do from sets you've been on?
Yeah, well, the primary thing I try to take when I've written something or I'm producing something or I'm directing something is I try to make the actors as comfortable as they possibly can, because that makes my life easier, and I know it certainly makes the actor's life easier. The whole creative process basically comes to a dead stop if you yell at somebody or you make them feel insecure. Actors are insecure to start with, so they don't need much help. And so if you basically don't create an environment where they can try stuff and make mistakes and then never, ever say to an actor, Jesus, okay, let's do that again. Let's try one more time. Like you're kind of implying, try to be good this time. Just kind of say to them, lovely, I like that. That was a really interesting thing. Let's try to do maybe work on this time. I think that's one of the things I learned. I was fortunate enough very early in my career to work with John Schlesinger, who was like the amazing director. He did Midnight Cowboy and Far from the Madding Crowd and all these incredible movies. This is a long, boring story, so I'll compress it. When I first met him, I was so nervous meeting him because I was kind of a young actor who'd only done television, and the few feature films I had done were very small parts, and I had to come in and audition. This was the first time I actually had a meeting with a director, and he's an Academy Award-winning director, and I'm so nervous. And I'm like, and he's asking me questions, and I can't think of what to say, and I don't know. And I finally say to him, Mr. Schlesinger, because I don't even have enough nerve to call him John. I say, Mr. Schlesinger, I'm really nervous, and you're one of my favorite directors, and I would love to work with you. Can you just give me like some pages, and I'll read for you, and we'll just kind of start all over again? And he was so sweet and so nice. And he said, well, let me give you a tip. And I said, okay, please. And he said, when I go to a meeting, I know I'm going to be nervous. I wear a lapel pin. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I wear a lapel pin, and then the person who's sitting next to me goes, what's with the pin? And we have a nice conversation, and then I'm not so nervous anymore, and we broke the ice, and we have a lovely time. So now, cut to 40 years later, every time I go to an audition, I have a collection of probably 65 lapel pins, and I wear a lapel. It's kind of like my trademark. I wear a lapel pin to every audition, and I would say probably 80% of the time people say, what's with the pin? And so it's like it breaks the ice every time. And what he did when I got the part was he was so cool. He would sit in a chair and watch it, and then he would just come up and whisper something to me, not let the other actors hear it, but very specific and doable. Sean is like your little brother, and you love him, but he's a complete screw-up. Okay, that's very playable. Now, I have a brother. I understand what that means. And that was a real specific thing. Like, don't just come in and yell at him because you're mad at him. Start off kind of cajoling, and you're trying to talk him into it, and let the frustration be underneath it, and let the action be that you're trying to talk him into it. But what you really want to do is you want to punch him in the nose, but don't show that to me. So when I direct something, that's what I try to do. I try to think of very actable notes for an actor, as opposed to say it faster, or say it louder, or be really angry. to me, that's not an actable note. I would give something to somebody that was very specific, like John gave to me, in that this is your wife who you love desperately, but because of the problems you've had through your life, you cannot say those words. You want to desperately, but you cannot get those words out. They physically will not come out of your mouth. Try as hard as you can to say them, but you can't get those words out of your mouth. And then that translates to the actor playing the role, or maybe they say it, maybe they don't say it, but that's a real actable thing to do, as opposed to saying you love her, but you don't know how to express it. Give them a physical task that they can do that shows the emotion. And that's kind of what I've learned over the course. And also what I usually tell actors when I'm directing is, what, I probably don't know what I want, so show me something. Show me something, and then I'll take credit for it. But just,
I'll either know I want that, or I'll know I don't want you to do that again. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And I'll joke about it and say, and I'll let you know if I don't want that. But, just try something, because it's a collaborative effort. And if I wrote the thing, I had a picture in my head, but you might have a different picture. So show me that picture, and, maybe we'll both be happy with it. Or maybe we'll adjust it or something like that. I like when people collaborate. That's what I was saying earlier, but I like having a director there. It's fun to collaborate, and it's fun to get other people's opinion and other people's take on things, and so I try to create a atmosphere where there's no stupid questions and there's no bad ideas, and although there really are, but that people feel free to kind of try stuff.
Yeah, I think it's important for there to be a space, whether it's in front of the camera or in the writer's room or whatever, where bad ideas can be pitched out loud. The room will let you know if it's bad. Don't consider it for us.
There are no bad ideas, because I've worked on TV shows in the writer's room, and somebody will say, what if when they're steaming that dress it shrinks? And you go, well, what if it doesn't shrink? It gets bigger. And they're like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. It kind of started with something that might have been a little bit of a cliche, and then maybe it goes to something else. And then there's a third person who goes, well, how about if the dress, disintegrates? Oh, well, that's kind of an interesting idea. Now that created all kinds of a conflict, and there's a dilemma because they're trying to get the dress and they need it immediately, and now it disintegrates. That's kind of, that's what I mean. As you were saying, you throw out an idea, and then other, creative people expand on that idea. And what started off as a cliche after about 3 minutes is like, yeah, that's kind of a good idea. I like that.
And everybody would have missed out if you had said,
yeah,
oh no, that's a cliche idea. I won't say it.
Well, that's, again, very early on, I was taking a writing class, and the writing instructor was very specific about kind of teaching us how to critique and react to people's suggestions. And one of the things he said is, you never want to say that's a cliche, because that totally shuts down the whole discussion and makes the other person feel bad. And then now they're very reticent about kind of throwing out ideas. If you say, I love that, how about, what if, and then you kind of jump off on that. So you're not only not putting the person down, but you're including them in the creative process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, because you're right. Same as on set, if you were to tell an actor, oh, God, don't do that again. Well, now you've got to waste everybody in the room's time assuaging their, picking them back up off the floor where you knocked them. And that wasn't that doesn't help your goal.
And it's just such a horrible thing to do, just as a human being. You can feel the person just kind of going, oh, I'm so sorry, I screwed up. I don't want to be here. I'm not good at this. And again, it's like, why are you doing that to a fellow human being when there's no reason to? And selfishly, it doesn't help me.
Yeah, it really doesn't achieve your goal. And
and I've worked with directors who have been really mean on the set, and their rationale is they go, I generate real emotion from you. I get you really angry because I'm just really rude to you, and then I turn on the camera and channel that. And I'm like, for me, that means that you have no technique as a director. That's just, you're not a nice person.
You mentioning that and mentioning method acting earlier, and then talking about Schlesinger, it just always brings me to mind of Marathon Man, the the best method
Yeah.
acting story I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
Olivier looking at Hoffman going, just act.
Well, he had a whole bunch of stories. I won't go into them because it would be embarrassing to the actors that were involved. But I ended up working with him for a couple of projects, and he was a great storyteller, and he loved to gossip and tell stories kind of out of school.
Yeah,
and he had all the very, very funny stories. And I studied with Strasberg, and the one thing that I always tell young actors, I'll be working on a set with somebody, and they're like pumping it up and getting ready like they're going to explode. And I'm like, the one thing that Strasberg said, if you can connect with the other actor moment to moment and the scene works, then do it. The problem is when you can't break the emotion and get to the point, that's when you need some kind of technique. But he was a big proponent of, like, keep it simple, work moment to moment, watch the other actor, listen to what they say, don't anticipate, react. Acting is reacting. And so many actors who misuse method basically come in, loaded for bear. And, maybe I say the line to him like, hey, how are you? And they're like, what do you mean by that? And it's like, whoa, you're not in the reality of the scene. You watch Meryl Streep, and basically she starts off smiling, and 30 seconds later she's crying. And, that's good acting because you're not anticipating, and, Strasberg would say is you don't know what's going to happen on page 3. It's like in real life. If I walk in and I'm talking to you on the phone, I don't know that your dog's going to bark. So I can't be upset by your dog barking before your dog barks, that kind of stuff. So you have to internalize it all and then find the trigger to make it work at the right point in the scene. And sometimes you don't need anything because you're playing off the other actor, and you've talked at lunch and you've connected with them and you have a nice rapport with them, and you don't have to force it. Sometimes, like I said, you get off the airplane, they drive you to the set, and they say, okay, this is your father, and you hate him. You're like, okay, I probably need to think about a few things here before I'm ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't come in, 2 miles into a race, the other person's not running.
Well, that's the problem. A lot of young actors mistake that, and they also they mistake the level of energy that you need to put out in front of a camera. That the camera does a lot of the work. Like I was working with a guy, and he was working so hard at thinking. I was just like, why don't you just try thinking as opposed to pretending that you're thinking? Just think about something. It doesn't really make a difference to me what you think about. The camera will show me that you're thinking. Yeah. And as opposed to like, furrowing your brow and oh boy, I'm thinking about a lot of stuff now. Just think about something, and then hopefully think about something that works for the scene, and then say your line very simply like you do in real life. I think about the fact that I'm mad at my brother and he really upsets me, but I don't want to show that. And then you have years of that building up in you, and then you kind of go, and the line comes out maybe almost kind of playful, but underneath it is the edge of, for years, you have really pissed me off, but you're saying it with a smile. Yeah. Because that's what you're thinking about at that moment, that I don't want to show him that I'm mad at him, but I really am angry, but I don't want this to escalate, as opposed to starting off, so high that you have no place to go in the scene.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about the detail you said earlier about the director saying, now show me in your eyes that you don't understand a word coming out of his mouth right now. And I know from seeing TV that is something that comes across in camera. You can see people think. And then I think back to the, watching older movies, the first few years after talkies started, and the grand gestures and the giant emoting because you thought somebody had to see you from the back row of the theater.
Exactly. And that's why guys like John Garfield and people like that stood out from the very beginning. Spencer Tracy, all those guys who got it. They either through training or just because who they were, they understood that the camera will find the emotion. I don't have to bring the emotion to the camera will find the emotion. And, just think real thoughts, have genuine emotions, connect with the other actor, listen to them. You watch Spencer Tracy, and it's like a master class in acting. You wish that you could have a time machine and go back and just be be in the set watching him work, and I'm sure that every take was slightly different, and because he was reacting to what was going on with the other actor, and maybe he laughed one time, maybe he didn't laugh in the next take because that emotion wasn't what came up. And that's just like, for me, that's like how it should be done. You watch those guys who are such consummate pros. I worked with Jack Warden when I first started as an actor. He was just like the consummate pro who had great comedic timing, could be a great dramatic actor. And there were times in the scene where I would, miss my cue because I was watching Jack Warden, and you just kind of, just like, it's like real life. I'm watching Jack Warden talk. He's not acting. He's just being Jack Warden talking to people. And, but what was really remarkable was when they were said cut, he wasn't the same person. He was the character when the camera was on, but then when they cut, he was a different person. He could chat and be funny and talk about stuff. But as soon as they said action, he was right back into the character that belonged in that scene. And, again, you watch old pros who are really good at it. And, I would love to have somebody say, about me when I'm 100 years old he showed up and he was like a real pro. Every time he did his best. He tried. He said his lines. I believed him. He didn't fall down. He didn't run into the furniture. I just think that would be a really cool compliment.
Man, thank you so much for taking out time to talk to me today.
I
really appreciate it.
Yeah, really, really nice. It's been great talking to you. I would just like to throw in a plug if I can before I go.
Yeah, no, please.
I have a new YouTube series called The Amazing Return of Sal Jr. And this is an experiment 30 years ago. Gary Stein and I, who was my writing partner at the time, got a deal at Universal for these two characters we had created in comedy clubs. And pilots were written, pilots were shot. It never went anyplace. And 30 years later, people are still asking us, whatever happened to those characters, Sal and Jr.? And now they're on YouTube. We shot 8 episodes. We got a really cool crew. The show looks really funny. It looks really good. It's really funny. They're only 5-minute episodes. There's 8 of them. So go check out. This is an old dog trying to learn new tricks. I'm on the internet now. How cool is that? Yeah.
We'll definitely make sure to throw the link in. That sounds great. I'll have to check that out.
Okay. And it's been great talking with you.
Thank you again, Sam. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Electric Sweater Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter @TV Dudes. All the music for our show is by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and electricsweater.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.